PowerPoint here. So user-defined functions, we're going to cover that with the function exercises. But that's where you can write your own functions,
Yeah,
like we've already
so
talked about.
like I said, Python comes with functions in them, but sometimes you need a function that doesn't exist in Python, and you
Yeah.
can write your own if you want. And what
Awesome.
the DEF is, it's how you start your function. So DEF stands for define. So
Okay.
you define it, you give it a name, and then you can write what the function does.
Cool. So let's do how to write a function. We just called a function
Mhm.
as far as 2 and 3 go. So can you show us how to do an area of a rectangle? We can jump in.
Of course. So let's go back to Eclipse.
I'm excited.
And we can
We can define a function.
excuse me. So we're gonna DEF define, and then we can call it area.
Okay, just making that up.
And in parentheses, so when you are trying to find the area, what you need is length and width. So those are your variables that you need to enter. So you put L and W for length and width. But it doesn't have to be this. Your variables could be anything. You could write the words length and width. You can put X, Y, anything. It just represents that that's a placeholder for the values that you're entering.
Okay,
So you have your length and width, and then now you're gonna
I see the colon there. It came automatically, but you
Yes.
would have to type that if it doesn't show up.
Yeah, so if you have a version of Eclipse or an interpreter that doesn't have that, when you write a function, you define it, you put your variables, and you put a colon.
Okay,
Then when you enter, you need to indent. So everything you write has to be within that function, so it's indented.
okay,
So now we're gonna do. So what you're gonna do is you have to call the equation something, so you can return it. So I'm gonna call it answer. You can call it value. You can call it test. You can call it anything you want. Answer equals L times W.
okay. So that does the math. It's just multiply the two
so
values.
Your answer, to get your answer, you do length times width.
Okay,
Not
I'm
wild.
just suggesting something.
And then once you have that, you need to return something. So now if you were to print it, say for example I just printed that, it'll return nothing because you're doing the math, but you're not getting anything back. So you need to return. So you go back to your code and you type return answer. So you want it to do the calculation and then return what it gets.
Yeah, and we still wouldn't get anything yet because we're not using numbers yet,
Yeah.
and we don't have any print function.
Yep. So now we click enter, and then we can say print. So now we can call out area, and we can let's print out a 2x4.
Okay, so 2 something rectangle by 4 something rectangle. To
So
find
we
the
should
area,
get
we
an
just
8.
do this and it just multiplies 8.
Exactly. So now it just does
Awesome.
2 times 4 is 8.
Let's jump right ahead to the next exercise. So it's going to be perimeter.
All right.
Same kind of very basic function.
Mhm.
However, now it's 2 times length plus 2 times width.
Yeah.
However we do that math.
So now you guys might be thinking, wait, this is useless. Why would I do all of that when I could just say 2 times 4 and get...
Yeah, it's a lot. That would be a lot easier.
Yeah, but you'll see later that sometimes you have more complicated formulas that you need to do, and it's easier to just have a function rather than this. Right now it seems kind of useless, but you'll see when we do our password validation.
Yeah.
So the next one is perimeter. So I can just do this. So I'll define, call this one perimeter.
Okay.
Once again, you have your, and for perimeter it's the same. All you need is a length and a width.
Yep.
So, and then I'm gonna call this one value
Okay.
equals, so for perimeter, the way I calculate it is 2 times length plus width. So you do 2. Make sure you put the multiply. If you don't put it there, like it's not a calculator, it won't know that parentheses signifies multiply. So you have to put that sign in there. And then length plus width.
And then
And
return
once
value.
again, you have to return a certain value. So you return value.
All right. Let's go right to printing it then.
So now let's print perimeter.
Okay.
Then we can put 5 and 8.
So like 10 plus 16, so 26 should be what it's...
Exactly.
Cool.
You're very good at math, AJ.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, 5 times 2 is 10, 8 times 2 is 16, and then it adds
10
those
plus 16.
together.
Yep.
26.
Exactly. So these are just
Thank
very
you.
simple.
So, yeah, let me
Formulas
review
that
this a
you can
little
do.
bit. So we want to use our own function, so we use DEF.
To define it, yes. That's the first thing. If you don't have DEF, the program doesn't know that you're defining a function.
And then we get to name it whatever we want.
You can name it whatever you want. You can
And
name it area. It can be so it can be longer than area. It doesn't have to be one word.
Sure.
It can be area of rectangle, area of triangle. As long as it has to be one word though. So it has to be in one, no spaces. So you
No
can
spaces.
in the place of space you can put underscore to make sure it's a space.
And the name is important because that's how we call it later.
Yeah, so you have to remember the name.
And then we got the
Your variables.
Variables.
Your variables can be anything.
And there can be more than two. There can only be one.
Yes, you can have more than two variables.
And then we set some kind of code, and there could be lots of blocks of code. There can be conditions, math, whatever.
And you'll see that later.
And then we'll do a return. So let's move ahead, and let's see what we got on our presentation. So the last thing is
Password validation?
Yeah, password validation tool. So what we're going to do with the password validation tool is write something that helps us create strong passwords.
Yep.
As long as you agree that a strong password is at least 8 characters, using some uppercase and using some numbers. You can add more rules to this.
Yeah, you can have it have different symbols. You could say lowercase letters. You can create whatever kind of criteria you want. This is just a blueprint on how to go about doing so.
So I'm going to try jumping into your code here a little bit. I'm going to comment out what we just did. Cool, because I'm learning this as well.
Yeah.
And then we've got the validator up here. It looks like we have it a couple times. I'm going to go to this one, uncommented out.
Yeah.
And so let me test out how this validator works. And this is going to be helpful so that we all know what we're talking about exactly. So I'm able to type in a string that I'm considering to be my password, JKLFS. Let me simplify it. I'll just do JHH.
Yeah.
And if I run it, it says, oh, your password needs to be at least 8 characters.
Yeah.
Nice code, Patrice.
Thank you.
So I'll add some more characters. So now it's at least 8, I believe. Cool, but it says, oh, you need a number. So I'll put in the number 7. And now it says, but you also need one uppercase letter. So A, capital A. Now it says
great password.
So that's how it's going to work. But can you show us what's going on here?
So this is the code that does all that, and then it
Right.
probably doesn't seem like anything to you right now, but I'll go about explaining that.